Chapter 5. Cassia. A girl sits near me on the air train, wearing a beautiful, full-skirted gown. But she doesn't look happy. The confused expression on her face mirrors the way I feel. I know I'm coming home from work, but why so late? My mind is foggy and very tired, and I'm nervous, on edge. Something feels the way it did in the burrow the morning they took Kai away. There's a sharpness in the air, an echo of a scream on the wind. Did you get matched tonight? I ask the girl. In the moment the words come out of my mouth, I think, what a stupid question. Of course she did. There's no other occasion besides a banquet where someone would wear a dress like this. Her dress is yellow, the same color my friend M wore for her banquet back home. The girl looks at me, her expression uncertain, and then she glances down at her hands to see if the answer is there. It is, in the form of a little silver box. Yes, she says, her eyes lighting up. Of course. You couldn't have the banquet at Central Hall, I say to the girl, remembering something else, because it's being renovated. That's right, she says, and her father turns to look at me, an expression of concern on his face. So where did you have it at? I ask. She doesn't answer me. She slaps the silver box open and shut. It all happened so fast, she says. I'm going to have to look at the microcard again when I get home. I smile at her. I remember that feeling, I say. And I do. Remember. Oh no. I slip my hand inside my sleeve and feel a tiny scrap of paper there, one that's too small to be a poem. I don't dare take it out on the air train in front of so many eyes, but I think I know what's happened. Back in the burrow, when the rest of my family took the tablet and I didn't, they all seemed like I do now. Confused, but not completely at sea. They knew who they were and understood most of what they were doing. The air train slides to a stop. The girl and her family get off. At the last moment, I stand up and slip through the doors. This isn't my station, but I can't sit any longer. The air in Central feels moist and cool. It's not quite dark yet, but I see a hook of moon tipped in the dark blue water of the evening sky. Breathing deeply, I walk down to the bottom of the metal steps and stand off to the side, letting the others pass. I pull the slip of paper from my sleeve, hiding my hands and their movements in the shadows under the stairs the best I can. The paper says, remember. I've taken the red tablet, and it worked. I'm not immune. Some part of me, some hope and belief in what I am dissolves and disappears. No, I whisper. This can't be true. I am immune. I have to be. Deep down, I believed in my immunity. I thought I would be like Kai, like Xander and Indy. After all, I have conquered the other 2 tablets. I walked through the blue and the carving, even though it was supposed to stop me cold, and I've never once taken the green. The sorting part of my mind tells me, you were wrong. You are not immune. Now you know. If I'm not immune, then why do I have forgotten? Lost forever. My mouth tastes like tears. I run my tongue over my mouth, feeling to see if there's any trace of tablet left. Calm down. Think of what I remember. My most recent memory before the air train is of leaving the sorting center. But why was I there so late? I shift and feel something under my plain clothes, something besides the poems. The red dress. I'm wearing it. Why? Because Kai is coming tonight. I remember that. I put my hand over my pounding heart and feel the whisper of paper beneath, and I remember that I have poems to trade and that I carry them next to my skin. I know how these papers came to me back when I first got here. I remember it perfectly. A few days after my arrival in Central, I walked along the edges of the white barrier circling the still zone. For a moment, I pretended that I was back in the carving, that the barrier was one of the canyon walls, and that the windows that line the apartment buildings all the way up were the caves in the outer provinces, crevices in the stone of the canyon where people could hide, live, paint. But, I realized as I walked, the outside surfaces of the apartments are so slick and same that even Indy couldn't find a hold on the walls. The lawns of the green spaces were covered with snow. The air felt like it did back in Orient in winter, thick and cold. The fountain in the middle of one of the green spaces had a marble sphere balancing on a pedestal. A Sisyphus fountain, I thought, and I told myself, I need to be gone by spring, by the time the water runs over it again. I thought about Eli. This is his city, where he came from. I wonder if he feels about it the way I do about Oria, that in spite of all that has happened, it's still home. I remember watching Eli go toward the mountains with Hunter, the two of them hoping to find the farmers who had avoided the society for so long. I wondered if the barricade was up when he lived here, and I missed him almost as much as I missed Bram. The branches above me were dry, dead, their fingers unleaved and bare. I reached up and snapped one down. I listened. For a moment, for some sound of life in that quiet circle. But there were no sounds, really, beyond the ones that can't be stilled, like wind and trees. But I realized that told me nothing. In this society, we don't call out beyond our own bodies, the walls of our rooms. When we scream, it is only in the world of our own dreams, and I had never been sure who hears. I glanced over to make sure that no one was watching, and then I bent down, and in the snow near the hall I wrote an E for Eli's name. When I finished, I wanted more. These branches will be my bones, I thought, and the paper will be my heart and skin, the places that I feel everything. I broke more branches into pieces, a shin bone, a thigh bone, arm bones. They had to be in segments so they would move when I did. I slid them up into the legs of my plainclothes and down into my sleeves. Then I stood up to move. It's a strange feeling, I thought, like my bones are walking along with me on the outside of my body. Cassie, arise, someone said behind me. I turned around in surprise. A woman looked back at me, her features unremarkable. She wore a standard issue gray coat, like mine, and her hair and eyes were brown or gray. It was hard to say. She looked cold. I couldn't tell how long she'd been watching me. I have something that belongs to you, she said. It was sent in from the outer provinces. I didn't answer. Kai had taught me that sometimes silence was best. I cannot guarantee your safety, the woman said. I can only guarantee the authenticity of the items, but if you come with me, I'll take you to them. She stood up and began walking. In moments, she'd be out of sight, so I followed her. When she heard me coming, she slowed down and let me catch up. We walked, not speaking, along streets and past buildings, beyond the edges of the pools of light from the street lamps, and then to a snarled wire fence enclosing an enormous grassy field pitted with rubble. Ghostly white plastic coverings on the ground billowed and breathed in and out with the passing breeze. She ducked through a gap in the fence, and I did too. Stay close, she said. This field is an old restoration site. There are holes everywhere. As I followed her, I realized with excitement where I must be going, to the archivist's real hiding place, not the museum where they did superficial surface trading. I was going to the place where the archivists must store things, where they themselves went to exchange poems and papers and information and who knew what else. As I skirted the holes in the ground and listened to the wind rustle the plastic coverings, I knew that I should be afraid. And somewhere, deep inside, I was. You're going to have to wear this, the woman said. Once we were in the middle of the field. She pulled out a dark piece of fabric. I need to tie it over your eyes. I cannot guarantee your safety. All right, I said, and turned my back to her. When she was finished tying the cloth, she held me by the shoulders. I'm going to spin you around, she said. A little laugh escaped me. I couldn't help it. Like a game from first school, I said, remembering when we covered our eyes with our hands and played children's games on the lawns of the borough during leisure hours. A bit like that, she agreed, and then she spun me, and the world whirled around me, dark and chill and whispering. I thought of Kai's compass then, with its arrow that could always tell you where north was, no matter how often you turned. And I felt the familiar sharp pain that I always had when I thought of the compass, and how I traded his gift away. You're very trusting, she said. I didn't answer. Back in Oria, Kai had told me that archivists were no better or worse than anyone else, so I wasn't certain I could trust her, but I felt that I had to take the risk. She held my arm and I walked with her, lifting my feet awkwardly, trying not to step on anything. The ground felt cold and hard under my feet, but every now and then I felt the give of grass, something that had once been growing. She stopped, and I heard the rasp of her pulling something away. Plastic, I thought. That white sheet covering the remains of buildings. It's underground, she said. We'll go down a set of stairs, and then we'll reach a long hallway. Go very slowly. I waited, but she didn't move. You first, she said. I put my hands up to the walls, which were close and tight, and felt old bricks covered in moss. I scuffed my foot forward and took one step down. How will I know when I've reached the end? I asked her. And the words and the way I used them made me think of the poem from the carving. The one I loved the best of those I found in the farmer's library cave. The one that always seemed to speak of my journey to Kai. I did not reach thee, but my feet slipped nearer every day. 3 rivers and a hill to cross, 1 desert and a sea. I shall not count the journey one when I am telling thee. When I reached the last step, my foot slipped, just like in the poem. Keep going, she said from behind me. Use the walls to guide you. I dragged my right hand along the bricks while dirt crumbled among my fingers, and after a time I felt the walls open up into the space of a large room beyond. My feet echoed along the ground, and I heard different sounds, feet shifting, people breathing. I knew we were not alone. This way, the woman said, and she took my arm to guide me. We moved away from the sounds of others. Stop, the woman said. When I take off the blindfold, she told me, you'll see the items that everyone arranged to be delivered to you. You may notice that several are missing. They were the payment for delivery agreed upon by the sender. All right, I said. Take your time to look things over, she said. Someone will come back to escort you out. It took me a moment. I was disoriented, and the place underground was dim to understand what I was seeing. After a moment, I realized that I was walled in by 2 rows of long, empty metal shelves. They looked slick and clean, as if someone cared for them and smoothed away their dust. But even so, they reminded me of the crypt of a tomb we saw once in one of the 100 history lessons, where there were little caves full of bones and people carved in stone on top of boxes. So much death, the society told us, with no chance of life afterward. There was no tissue preservation then. In the middle of the shelf in front of me, I saw a large packet wrapped in thick plastic. When I pulled back the top edge of the plastic, I found paper. The pages I brought out of the carving. The smell of water and dust, sandstone, seemed to come up from the paper. Kai, he managed to send them to me. I put my hands flat on the paper, breathing in, holding on. He touched these too. In my mind, a stream ran, and snow fell, and we said goodbye on the bank, and I took the water, and he ran alongside it, bringing these words the length of the river. I turned through the papers, looking at each page, and in that cold metal aisle, alone, I wanted him. I wanted his hands at my back and his lips seeking poems on mine, and our journey to each other to be completed, the miles between us consumed, and all distance closed. A figure appeared at the end of the shelves. I held the papers against my chest and backed up a few steps. Is everything all right? Someone asked. And I realized it was the same woman who had brought me. She came closer, the yellow-white circle of her flashlight directed down at my feet and not at my face to blind me. Have you had enough time to look? Everything appears to be here, I said, except for 3 poems, which I assume are the price you mentioned for the trade. Yes, she said, if that's all you need, then you can go. Come out of the shelves and cross the room. There's only one door. Take the stairs back out. No blindfold this time? But then I'll know where we are, I said. I'll know how to come back. She smiled. Exactly. Her gaze lingered on the papers. You can trade here, if you like. No need to go to the museum with a cache like that. Will I be an archivist then? I asked. No, she said. You'd be a trader. For a moment I thought she meant traitor, which of course I was to the society, but then she went on. Archivists work with traders, but archivists are different. We've had specific training, and we can recognize recognize forgeries that the average trader would never notice. She paused, and I nodded to show I understood the importance of what she was saying. If you bargain with a trader alone, you have no guarantee of authenticity. Archivists are the only ones with adequate knowledge and resources to ascertain whether or not information or articles are genuine. Some say the faction of archivists is older than the society. She glanced down at the pages in my hands and then back up at me. Sometimes a trade comes through with items worth noting, she said. Your papers, for example. You can trade them one at a time if you like, but they will have more value as a group. The larger the collection, the higher price you can get. And if we see potential in you, you may be allowed to broker others' trades on our behalf and collect part of the fee. Thank you, I said. Then, thinking of the words of the Thomas poem, which Kai always thought I might be able to trade, I asked, what about poems that are remembered? You mean poems with no paper document to back them up? She asked. Yes. There was a time when we would accept those, though the value was less, she said. That is no longer the case. I should have assumed as much from the way the archivist and Tana reacted when I tried to trade with the Tennyson poem. But I thought that the Thomas poem, unknown to anyone except Kai and me, might have been an exception. Still, I had a wealth of possibility, thanks to Kai. You can store your items here, the archivist said. The fee is minimal. Instinctively, I drew back. No, I told her. I'll find somewhere else. She raised her eyebrows at me. Are you certain you have a secure place? She asked, and I thought of the cave where the pages had been saved for so long, and the compact where grandfather kept the first poems hidden for years, and I knew where I'd hide my papers. I've buried words and burned them, I thought, but I haven't tried the water yet. In a way, I think it was Indy who gave me the idea of where to hide the papers. She always talked about the ocean, and even more than that, it might have been her odd, oblique manner of thinking. The way she looked at things sideways, upside down, instead of straight on, seeing truth from unexpected and awkward angles. I want to trade for something right away tonight, I told the archivist, and she looked disappointed, as though I were a child who was about to spend all these fragile, beautiful words on something shiny and false. What do you need? She asked. A box, I said, one that fire can't burn and that won't let in water or air or earth. Can you find something like that? Her face changed a little, became more approving. Of course, she said. Wait here. It won't take me long. She vanished again along the shelves. That was our first trade. Later, I discovered the woman's identity and later learned that she was the head archivist in Central City, the person who oversees and directs the trades but doesn't often execute them herself. But from the beginning, she's taken a special interest in the pages Kai sent me. I've always worked with her since. When I climbed out from underground that night, clutching a box full of papers in my chilled hands, I paused for a moment at the edge of the field. It was silver grass and gray and black rubble. It could make out the shape of the white plastic that covered the other excavations, protecting them from a restoration interrupted and not yet resumed. I wondered what that place used to be and why the society decided to abandon any attempts at bringing it back. And then what happened next? I asked myself. Where did I put the pages after I took them from the archivist's hiding place? For a moment, the memory tries to slip away like a silvered fish in a stream, but I catch hold of it. I hid the papers in the lake. Even though they told us the lake was dead, I dared to go into it because I saw signs of life. The bank looked like the healthy streams in the carving, not the one where Vic was poisoned. I could see where grass had been, in a place where spring came in and the water was warm. I even saw fish moving slowly, spinning the winter deep below. I crept out through the brush that went up to the edge of the lake, and then I buried the box under the middle pier, under the water and the stones that patterned in the shallow part where the lake touches shore. And then a new memory comes back. The lake. That's where Kai said he'd meet me. Once I reached the lake, I switched on the flashlight I keep hidden in the brush at the edge of the city, where the streets run out and the marsh takes over. I don't think he's here yet. There are always moments of panic when I come back. Will the papers be gone? But then I take a deep breath and put my hands into the water, move away from the rocks, and lift out a dripping box filled with poetry. When I trade the pages, it's usually to pay for the exchange of messages between Kai and me. I don't know how many or whose hands the notes will go through before they get to Kai. So I sent my first message in a code I created, one that I invented during the long hours of sorts that didn't require my full attention. Kai figured out the code and changed it slightly when he wrote me back. Each time, we built upon the original code a little, changing and evolving it to make it harder to read. It's not a perfect system. I'm sure the code can be broken, but it's the best we can do. The closer I get to the water, the more I realize that something is wrong. A thick cluster of black birds has gathered out near the edge of the first dock, and another group of them is congregated farther down the shore. They cry and call to each other, picking at some things on the ground. I shine my flashlight on them. The black birds scatter and screech at me, and I stop short. Dead fish lap along the bank, catching reeds, belly up, glazed eyes. And I remember what Kai said about Vic and the way he died. I remember that dark poison streamed back out of the outer provinces and the other rivers of the society poisoned as the water rained down to the enemy. Who's poisoning the society's water? I shiver a little and wrap my arms more tightly around myself. The papers inside my clothes whisper. Underneath all this death, somewhere in the water, other papers lie buried. It's early spring, but the water is still frigid. If I go in to get the papers now, I won't be able to wait as long for Kai. What if he comes and I've gone home cold?